If I could have your attention, please. We're going to call to order the summer quarterly meeting of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. My name is Evan Cope. I'm chair of the commission, and I want to welcome everybody here. We appreciate your attendance. The first order of business we have this morning or afternoon is to adopt the agenda, and at this time I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
The motion, is there a second? There's a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next order of business is approval of the minutes from the May 11, 2017 meeting. The chair will entertain either a motion to amend the minutes or a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I propose a motion to amend the minutes. In our previous meeting, I did have a conversation or discussion with regard to the importance of colleges and universities having some sort of program or effort in regards to mental illness or mental health. And so I just would ask that that be included in the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Stafford. We have a motion from Commissioner Stafford. Is there a second to amend the minutes?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Now the next order of business is approval of the minutes as amended.
Move approval.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the chairman's report, which I will deliver now. I first want to acknowledge the wonderful news that came out last week on Tennessee's FAFSA filing rate, which I'm pleased to report is #1 in the nation for the third year in a row. Round of applause for that. I want to offer congratulations on behalf of this commission to the many people at THEC and THEC who worked very, very hard to make this happen, including the THEC outreach team, the College Access and Success Division, and the Planning and Research Division. As the summer winds down, and that's hard to believe that the summer is winding down, but as it winds down, I'd also like to take the opportunity to recognize and thank the interns and the graduate assistants who've been working at THEC, THEC this summer. We are grateful for their work they have done this summer, and we hope they have gained insight and experience for their future careers. And if you would please, interns and graduate assistants, please stand. I also want to recognize my friend Dr. David Rudd, president of the University of Memphis, for being here today. Thank you, Dr. Rudd, for your presence. This is sort of a new feature for those of you who've been at our meetings before. Now that we're under the Focus Act, we thought it appropriate and proper to have a representative from our locally governed institutions to have a seat at our table to communicate with us here officially and to share the perspective of the locally governed institutions. And so we're grateful that it's Dr. Rudd. Thank you. We have two new commission members. I'll make sure I get this right. Jeremy Chisenhall, our student member who attends Austin Peay State University, is now in his second year of his term and will now be able to cast a vote legally.
Cross it off the bucket list.
That's right. It's a big milestone. Thank you for being here. I also want to welcome Jimmy Johnston to the commission. He was appointed by Governor Haslam and will be representing the Middle Grand Division of our state. He is the president and CEO of the Ford Sumner Economic Partnership. We're happy to have him serving on the commission. I was given a note here. I debated whether or not to read it, but Carol Ann wanted me to make sure I made everybody aware that Jimmy went to Auburn University. And so she wants to give a big War Eagle to Jimmy there. So, yes, sir. I'm glad to have you here. And then finally, I don't think we have anyone calling in today, do we?
We do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. I'll leave that last remark. Those are my remarks.
David.
Mike.
David.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, we have some sad news that I did want to advise the commission about. Everyone here knows and loves David Wright. David became very, very sick in the last few days and is currently in the intensive care unit at Vanderbilt Hospital. I'll share it to that extent. It is serious, obviously, given where he is. So, with your permission, I'd like to have a moment of silence where, if you're so inclined, you'd please pray for David's health and recovery. Thanks very much. Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to dive right in with other news that is both exciting but bittersweet for THEC. It is always an honor when you see someone from your team get called up to the big leagues, so to speak. And with that note, Kate Derrick, please stand. Kate will be joining the staff of Governor Haslam next week in the Communications Department. You all know so much of what has changed the last several years at THEC has actually been about, I think, how we communicate, and Kate has been at the core of all of that, ranging from our Twitter account to some ill-advised Facebook Lives she made me do. She is just a creative engine. She's the kind of person you want in the office. So we are proud of her, though, more than anything, and we'll miss her. So please, if you have a moment, take a chance to say something to her today. I want to do something slightly unorthodox, Mr. Chairman. I will take the podium for my next remarks.
Please do.
So I am actually nearing the one-year mark in my role here at the Commission. I will tell you it has been everything I had hoped it would be. We have an incredible team, as you've learned, and that is actually the highest honor, is to work with them. We also, I think, as an agency, have transformed to serve students in some very direct ways, and we'd like to formalize that transformation now by thinking about, in some ways, the most basic job of any leader, and that's to make sure that your team has what they need to succeed, that they're structured appropriately for success. And so I'd like to present to the Commission briefly a proposal that we plan on adopting on August 1st that we believe will align the agency to be fully in touch with our student efforts. First, the old structure. I would just say a couple things about this. As you all know, in 2009, the executive director of THEC was assigned a statutory dual role as the TSAC executive director. In many ways, during that transition over the last several years, the agencies were run as two agencies. I want to give Dr. Russ Deaton a lot of credit, because during his time of leadership here at THEC and TSAC, those lines began to blur. Because the reality is, if THEC is the policy body and TSAC is the financial aid body, a barrier between those two groups isn't good for students. And so Russ started something that I think we're going to be able to really take to full implementation now, and that is fully merging these two agencies functionally. As you all know, org charts proceed over time and layers build, and that's, I think, a very natural part of any organization. When we sat down as an executive team, and I'll identify the members that were part of building this new transformational structure, we sat down that instead of looking at old wineskins, so to speak, we asked ourselves three questions. These are the three things that I think will get us to the Drive to 55. I believe that. I think if THEC is an innovation hub for students, I think if we continue to create policy focused on the Drive to 55, and if we continue to fulfill our role as a consumer protection agency, I think if we do these three things well, I think we'll reach the Drive to 55. I think we'll support our partners at UT, we'll support our partners at TBR and in Takua. I think this structure was in some ways disconnected from those three questions. So when we sat down, we asked ourselves, how can we align along those areas? And the result was a complete rethinking of the agency. First, recognizing that THEC and TSAC barriers had become largely artificial. The reality was the agency really was working day to day together. Another realization that we had many people across the agency doing similar functions in different divisions. And so as we began to answer that question, I think we began to put together a structure that recognized that in each area, there was a way for us to get people together under the same umbrella and serve students more efficiently. First, creation of a new Academic Affairs and Student Success Division. Academic Affairs, led by Betty Dandridge Johnson, has long been associated with many traditional academic program functions, but they've also in recent years began to gain substantial grant awards that directly benefit students. We also had several areas of our agency that it felt like the right thing to do to get them together because they serve the same type of student. And specifically, I'm referring to our Veteran Education Bureau and our Adult Learner Bureau, because by definition, every veteran is an adult student. And those groups are at the core of Betty's operation, but also a newly created HBCU Excellence Initiative will be housed in the Student Success Division as well. Second, student aid and compliance. Thank you, Dr. Glover, for that round of applause. Student aid and compliance. This division will be led by Pete Abernathy, most of you know, a senior leader previously at TSAC, now at THEC and TSAC. And this division has two big jobs: regulate and protect students, but also make sure that student aid is delivered in the most efficient way possible. On our second focused area around the policy environment, there's some self-evident bureaus that fall under this heading. Dr. Emily House's bureau, which was the research and planning, will be housed here, as well as the legal and external bureau led by Scott Sloan. Finally, again, I want to reiterate, our student protection mission is very important. The work that Dr. Beller Chase does, this is a part of our agency that talks to students every day, oftentimes to ascertain if something has gone on that is either illegal or violates a THEC rule. Having this division, I think, with the emphasis of a third point that THEC's protection role is core to our mission, and bringing in the TSAC regulators under the same heading. So we have a TSAC bureau that has been solely focused on financial aid compliance. Getting our compliance and regulatory team together is the other new addition. Finally, we have a finance and administration bureau, much like all of your agencies, and they support all of these three questions. What I feel good about standing before the board is I could not have told you how that org chart was assembled, other than natural evolution. I believe I can answer with certainty how this org chart has emerged. So with that, I would take any questions the commission might have. I want to recognize too, and I've mentioned each of them. So if you're a bureau chief, if you could please stand up. Emily House, Scott Sloan, Jason Cavender, Betty Dandridge Johnson, Pete Abernathy is not with us. For the higher education people in the room, these are the analogs to a president's cabinet. They're the senior leaders who oversee knitting together many disparate functions, and they are all also part of the team that got us here in a collaborative way. And so I'm grateful to each of them for their leadership. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
I think
Chairman.
that's great work. It's fantastic. Thanks for doing that. Any questions of Mike before we?
Just a question regarding the size of the organization. Did the number of employees change in any way as a result of the reorg?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Dishner. First, as you may or may not have known, THEC and TSAC have been undergoing a significant reduction in force over the last 2 years due to a series of programmatic changes. That actually put us in a posture where this is an organizational shift for efficiency that does not result in any loss of positions. I would argue we're a very lean organization now with THEC and TSAC having about 60 FTEs apiece.
Any other questions? Okay, next order of business are institutional reports, and we will start with Dr. Tidings for the Tennessee Board of Regents.
All right, well, thank you. Director Krause, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission, it is a pleasure to be here with you today to present TBR's quarterly report, which is a brief update on the status of the major initiatives we've been working on since the last meeting. And just as an update with regard to the Focus Act, the TBR finance staff has reviewed the 6 university budgets to ensure that they meet the debt obligations as required under the Act. The TBR board, did approve all budgets from that standpoint at the June meeting for your update. And as you've just heard from Director Krause, changes in the air in organizational structure. It is the same for the Tennessee Board of Regents. As I shared with you at our last meeting, as defined by the Focus Act, we have been restructuring the system office to ensure that we are a more unified system of community and technical colleges. Most of you in the room are already aware that Dr. Russ Deaton has joined our staff as our new Executive Vice Chancellor for Policy and Strategy. Under his exemplary leadership, we will also add the divisions of Organizational Effectiveness, Student Success, and Academic Affairs. Dr. Deaton received his PhD from Vanderbilt University, where he studied public policy adoption process and state government, a mouthful. And since 2007, he has served as an adjunct faculty member at Vanderbilt, teaching courses in higher education finance, public policy, and policy economics. He was honored with the Distinguished Adjunct Faculty Member Award from Vanderbilt's Peabody College for the 2014-15 academic year. Russ, would you please stand and be recognized? Other changes to my new roster include our new interim Vice Chancellor for Student Success, Dr. Heidi Lemming, who has been at the System Office for 3 years, formerly the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. She was previously at the College of Coastal Georgia for 3 years as an assistant vice president for student affairs. Prior to that, she worked in the TBR system for 5 years as director of student life at Austin Peay and in student life at the University of Memphis. Her PhD in higher education is from the University of Georgia. Her master's is from Virginia Tech, and she earned her bachelor's degree at Minnesota State University. And Dr. Lemming, I don't believe she's with us today. Mr. Danny Gibbs is our new Vice Chancellor of Business and Finance. Danny comes to us from Roane State Community College, where he was Executive Vice President for Business and Finance since 2006. He joined state government as a legislative auditor in the Comptroller's Office in 1983, moving to Volunteer State in 1984 as Assistant Vice President for Business and Finance for 22 years. He holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Tennessee THEC University and is a certified public accountant. Mr. Gibbs. Also, Dr. Robert Den is our new Associate Vice Chancellor for the K-12 initiatives. Dr. Den was previously at Chattanooga State, where he served as Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness and also noted as the co-creator of the SALES program, along with Dr. Kim McCormick. Dr. Den earned his Ph.D. at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, his EDS from Tennessee Tech, his master's at the University of Southern Miss, and his bachelor's degree from Southeast Louisiana. Dr. Den. And our new Chief Audit Executive is Mr. Mike Batson, who has been at the TBR System Office since October 1st of 2016, joining us as Director of System-Wide Internal Audit after 22 years as Director of Internal Audit, Fiscal Analyst, and Internal Auditor at Tennessee State University. He joined state government in 1986 as a legislative auditor in the State Comptroller's Office, leaving in 1993 for a year in the private sector before returning to state service at TSU. He holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Auburn University and is a certified public accountant. I don't think Mike is with us this afternoon. And as I said, we are now truly what I call fielding a strong team, and I am looking forward to a winning season with our new team. Other quick updates that I want to make you aware of is that the Board of Regents last month did approve a 2.6% increase in tuition rates at our community and technical colleges, well under the 4% ceiling and reflecting the lowest increase for community and technical colleges combined since 1991. Our Tennessee transfer pathways, as you know, the Complete College Tennessee Act requiring the development of the statewide program for the seamless transfer and guaranteed credit transfer for students from our 13 colleges, are now up to 65 specific pathways. Students who follow the prescribed pathway curriculum and who are accepted at their university are guaranteed that these credits earned will transfer. The annual meetings of faculty for review of existing pathways, as well as the meetings for the development of new transfer pathways and the TTP website, all are under the coordination of TBR. I'm pleased to report that the dramatically revised and improved TennesseeTransferPathway.org webpage went live on July 5th with the theme From Here to Career. It is now an interactive site that tells students everything they need to know before they register as freshmen, all the way through to degree completion. The redesigned site was actually put in place using transfer students as our staff development team, helping us to analyze what was most beneficial to students. So if you have time, please visit the site and give us any thoughts that you might have for improvement. With regard to reverse transfer, the Tennessee Board of Regents system also coordinates the transfer of transcripts and the student degree audit to determine eligibility for the associate degree. When confirmed, associate degrees are then awarded to our community colleges, and since the inception of the reverse transfer 2 years ago, we have awarded 1,941 associate degrees, including 427 just this past spring. We are collaborating with the universities to improve the opt-in process on the transfer application, which we will expect to increase student awareness and their ability to gather this associate degree. TBR is also working closely with THEC to prepare for the launch of the expanded Tennessee Reconnect in 2018. A Reconnect task force with representatives from all 40 campuses has been convened, which in turn is establishing campus-level Reconnect teams. We are also creating a D2L course where the teams can assess shared materials, collaborate, hold discussions, and submit requested information. In September, we will hold a statewide Reconnect Academy with a focus on creating a baseline understanding of the adult learner, theory, and how to connect theory to a specific institutional action. In October, the Office of Student Success will begin holding monthly calls with the campus teams to check on progress and answer questions. And scheduled in November, representatives from THEC and TBR will conduct campus visits to look at each institution's specific Reconnect plan. With regard to economic development, our Economic Development Division has been working in tandem with the State Economic Development Department in the creation of a statewide certification program for regional directors and TBR presidents. The purpose of this training is to make sure that we are well prepared as a state to consistently meet the workforce demands of existing and new industry. Commissioner Phillips with the Department of Labor has also expressed interest in his team participating in this training. I'll keep you posted as we progress with that in the early fall. Presidential transitions, we've had a few in the last several months, and I'm pleased to report that after a national search, Dr. Rebecca Ashford was selected as the next president of Chattanooga State Community College. Dr. Ashford began her new position on July 10th. She was formerly the Vice President of Student Affairs at Pellissippi State, and she held that job since 2008. We are looking forward to her doing a great job at Chattanooga State as she begins to remold and reshape what is occurring there. Also, in presidential changes, Dr. Janice Gillum retired on June 30th as the president of Northeast State. Executive Vice Chancellor James King has graciously agreed to serve as our interim president until we are finished conducting a national search for that position. And finally, Ms. Hilda Tunstall has been appointed as interim president at Montlow Community College after the resignation of Dr. Tony Kinkle. Ms. Tunstall has been with the college for 29 years and on the senior leadership team since 2004, most recently as the Vice President for Finance and Business Administration. And finally, I want to recognize the first wave of Tennessee Promise graduates this spring. These students were in the first cohort of Promise students who arrived on our campuses in the fall of 2015. And I'm sure that the university presidents are going to be seeing many of these graduates as they go to their campuses in the next month. One of these graduates was Josh Sperling, a Promise student who graduated from Maroon State in May and is transferring to UTK. He served as a student member of the Board of Regents this past year, doing an outstanding job, including a presentation that he did to the board with two other students on how we can improve Tennessee Promise from the students' perspective. We and THEC are anxiously awaiting spring data so that we can continue to understand our student success patterns and look for ways to improve. I also would like to thank Governor Haslam, who fulfilled a pledge he made in 2015 to Tennessee Promise students at Cleveland State. He promised he would come back and speak at their graduation. On May 6th, he kept his word and delivered the commencement address to this proud group of students. That is my report. I thank you, and I will take any questions you might have.
Questions for Dr. Tidings? Thank you very much for your report. Next, Mr. David Miller for the University of Tennessee.
Thank you. I'm happy to present today for President Joe DiPietro. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the University of Tennessee. Administratively, summer is an incredibly busy time in higher education, and particularly at the University of Tennessee. Despite the fact I have to convince people at the grocery store, when I tell them where I work, they say, "Do you work in the summer? Do you get summer off?" No, we do not get the summer off. It's incredibly busy. We're preparing our fiscal year 19 budgets, capital and operating budgets for submission. In the June board meeting of the trustees, they adopted a third year of record low tuition increases. President DiPietro recommended and the board adopted, holding resident undergraduate tuition to 1.8% or the Higher Education Price Index rate. It's the first time since the UT system was established in 1968 that we've had 3 consecutive years of 3% or lower tuition increases. And it's a plan that we intend to continue of targeting the HEPI rate or lower for resident undergraduates. At a time when stories of high student debt make headlines, 44% of UT undergraduates complete a bachelor's degree without any debt. So, and we often hear it said average debt for students. That's with students with debt. So 56% of students have some debt. For those who graduate with debt, it's around $24,000 on average. But those with a college degree have as much as a seven-figure increased lifetime earning potential. So we continue to believe that a UT education is a very wise financial investment. The funding formula metrics, we would like to say a couple of words about. We're making good progress in the funding formula metrics established by THEC. We're seeing improvement in basically all areas except master's degrees on all campuses and doctoral degrees at Chattanooga. So looking at why that is, the primary reason for the decline in master's degrees is the removal of salary increases upon completion of master's degrees for teachers in Tennessee. UT Knoxville is now focusing on more PhD enrollment than master's degree enrollment, which is consistent with their mission as a high-intensive research university. Regarding the Drive to 55, we are continually working with community colleges to improve the transfer pathways to make it easier for students to transfer to our campuses. While implementation of the Tennessee Promise may have adversely affected new freshman enrollment for Chattanooga and Martin in 2015 and 16, we are hoping that the Tennessee Promise students will yield more transfer students in coming years. We've not seen a large increase in applications next year for transfer students because it typically takes 2 to 3 years for community colleges to complete their programs. So we anticipate larger increases in transfer applications from Tennessee Promise students in 18-19. And the last thing I'd like to mention is something that President DiPietro mentioned last meeting, that we were embarking on a project of resetting peer groups for all of our institutions. That project that I've led will be culminated next Friday at a Board of Trustees meeting, a meeting of the Executive and Compensation Committee, to adopt peer groups for all of our institutions. It's the first time the board has adopted peer groups formally. They've generally been developed administratively. That has led to some confusion about which peer groups might be used for which type of study. These peer groups that have been developed will be used for all data presented to the Board of Trustees consistently. So regardless of academic performance, financial data, these are the peer groups that will be used by the Board of Trustees, and they'll be reviewed. I'm sure the board will ask us to review them periodically for accuracy. At the June meeting, the board adopted the criteria by which we are to evaluate institutions to determine the peer groups. So I think that's going to be really helpful in serving the Board of Trustees in evaluating institutional performance. That concludes our remarks, Mr. Chair.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Miller, what is the size you anticipate for the peer groups?
We didn't want to predetermine the size. We wanted the data to help us figure out where natural breaks were.
Okay.
But they're going to be 12 to 15 comparable peers and 4 to 6 aspirational institutions. I don't like the term aspirational peers. It's an oxymoron. They're aspirational institutions or aspirational targets. And they'll be used differently. So.
Mr. Miller, could there be some differences? I understand the reason why there might have been differences between the peers within the university. Could there still be, though, some differences between the university and the peers in those pockets that may not transfer well when it comes to comparative information?
I am not sure I understand your question.
So, for instance, let's say Department of School of Chemistry.
Yes.
Your school may be somewhat unique by comparison to peers, though the peers match up well to the university. does that throw off the comparative information if there's not a similarity in comparison between the schools?
It's an excellent point, because these peers will be used for institution-wide data and at a high level for largely trustee purposes, or reporting to the Chronicle about the entire institution. Different colleges, and indeed individual programs, will compare for their purposes and perhaps some other data reporting to targeted associations, possibly even NESE, program-specific data that could be used for peer groups that closely align with those.
They'll use different peers
Yeah.
for that purpose.
But this is establishing one set of peers for each institution for general across the institution reporting, like retention rates, graduation rates, support per student, so forth.
Other questions? Thanks, Mr. Miller, very much. Next, our locally governed institutions report, President Rudd.
Thank you. For all of us, we've been working, I think, very hard over the course of the last 6 months or so to implement the Focus Act and make the transition to autonomous boards. Been a very time-consuming process, but actually has gone very smoothly. I would say it's gone more smoothly than most of us and maybe all of us would have anticipated. I don't know that we've had a hiccup as we've moved through that process. It's been a very good one. We've also had to transition in terms of our governance change with SAC COC, and so we're working at that issue at different levels. Our visit, Memphis's visit, is a couple of weeks. Several ETSU has already been through that SAC's review, so we're each doing that on our own pace and have done well. Overall, I think there was concern about our ability to collaborate as institutions after this transition to autonomous boards. And I would like to share with you that one of our first efforts actually is a collaborative effort, not just among the LGI institutions, but also UT Martin and UT Chattanooga for research expansion in the state. And that's an effort that we've already launched. We're already a number of weeks into that and plan to talk more specifically in the fall about that. But clearly an effort to expand research capacity, research collaboration, as well as overall economic impact across the different areas of the state. And it's a project we're excited about, optimistic about, and think that will have significant impact. And frankly, it's a very nice first collaborative effort out of the gate for us. And we're doing that while we're juggling with these boards. And for most of us, we've only had 2 board meetings. So this is an interesting process. Let me give you a couple of quick updates about some of the efforts that are being made on the different campuses. At APSU, they are launching a new BSE in engineering physics, and I think you know about that. That is launching, as well as a graduate certificate in data sciences and an MS in computer sciences and qualitative methods. They recently hosted the THEC. They're hosting a THEC external review for 2 proposed programs that you should be aware of: an EDD in educational leadership and an aviation degree with a concentration in professional rotor wing piloting. Not anything I'm particularly familiar with. If you look at enrollment projections for most of us, we're projecting increases, so I think what Dr. Tidings had said is probably true. Last year, APSU had a record of 1,963 freshmen. They expect to break that record this year, which is great to see. They've also increased external funding over the course of the last number of years. Relative to 2016, they had a 76% increase. And I believe that Alyssa said that they will maintain that growth at the same rate every year. Is that? So doing very well, doing remarkably well. At Tennessee Tech, they played a major role in attracting a new international corporation and partnership that's going to create 300 new high-tech and high-paying jobs over the course of the next 5 years. I'm sure you read a little bit about that. Tech and the TCAT Livingston are in the process of a major partnership that they're set to announce about a new facility in the coming week. You'll be reading a little bit more about. Their Tomorrow Capital campaign has raised $41 million towards a $60 million goal. making wonderful progress there. And their THEC Eagle Wing Student Center for Veterans will open in the fall. They're very busy, as many of us are, in terms of capital improvements. They're moving forward with a $90 million science building and a $50 million student rec center. ETSU and TTU have launched the new nursing DNP program. And they also have received, as with the growth in research at Austin P, they have received a $4 million NSF grant in cybersecurity. And they're going to be hosting a national boot camp for students across the country. So really a nice chance for visibility, not just for tech, but also for the state in general. At the University of Memphis, we're moving forward with a number of capital projects. We just completed a $58 million dorm. We're moving forward with our $40 million music center that was approved, a redesign on our student rec center and land bridge. Together is about a $50 million project that's moving forward. You'd be thrilled to know that we're moving forward with the parking garage. No one ever asked me about the parking garage. They always ask about the athletic facilities, but that parking garage is on pace. And we just announced yesterday that we received our largest grant, actually in our history. We received a $13.8 million grant from a subdivision of the Department of Defense, and we're very excited about that effort. Our enrollment is currently up about 6% as of today, which is very significant for us. We had 2,700. We had 2,700 freshmen last year. We think we'll break that this year. We think the bulk of that is due to improved retention. And that actually has played a role in terms of our completion. As you might imagine, in coordinating this first effort, we had a little bit of difficulty, and I think Dr. Nolan is here and Dr. Glover, and I'm going to ask them just quickly to add any additional comments that they might have on their own campuses.
Thank you. And the freshman class is showing much higher numbers from last year. We've gotten two new programs approved from our last board meeting. We want to offer now the doctorate and the PhD in higher education. So that's a real big plus for us because we've been working on that for quite a while to get it together. And we've changed a couple of names of the programs around that to make them more contemporary with today's environment. So I think I'll stop there.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, I would like to provide my update in a slightly different context. Quite often we focus upon enrollment, graduation rates, and the elements of Drive to 55. But one of the things that's in place at our institution is a focus on the public needs of the people of our region. We live in an area that is #1 in a state, that is #2 in the nation in terms of opioid abuse. If you were to walk into the neonatal clinic at the Nice-Wonder Children's Hospital, 50% of all the newborns who are in that clinic today are going through withdrawal, suffering from NAS. And in partnership with our local healthcare system, Mountain States, we have opened a fully comprehensive treatment, outreach, and educational facility in conjunction with our Center of Excellence in Opioid Abuse to hit this issue head on. It is a full comprehensive treatment facility and a facility in which all of the revenues generated from the patient care will be reinvested in the institution to focus on research, outreach, and prevention. So truly a unique partnership between us and our local healthcare provider. Never thought that I would embark upon opening a methadone clinic, but truly this is a dire need in our region. It's an impact that not only focuses negatively on economic and community development, but it's an impact, I know you had the joint board meeting this morning, that is beginning to show its way through pre-K and kindergarten. So our update is the collective work that our institution and our faculty are doing. It's resulted in about $3 million in NIH grant activity, realized funding, but the overall impact hopefully will be measured in changing the face of a challenge that not only grips our region, but the state and Central Appalachia as a whole. Mr. Chair, thank you.
And I would add that I think that's a great example of, if you look at the collaborative research expansion effort that we are in the midst of, it really focuses on applied research that makes a difference in our communities and in the state in very practical ways, and we're particularly excited about that.
Dr. Rudd, I had a question on the increase at the University of Memphis. I
Yes.
know, I think it was a year ago maybe, that you were granted permission to offer in-state tuition to contiguous counties, to Shelby.
That's correct.
How are you doing in the contiguous counties?
Actually, we're doing very well. Our positioning is such that for us to grow, it is going to be with out-of-state students, and we are seeing that. I can give you an example. Specifically, in our law school, we have almost quadrupled the number of out-of-state students in the law school over the last 2 years, and that is very specifically tied to the cost. The nice part of that is our data indicate that 57% of the students that we educate at whatever level stay in the region, become taxpayers in Tennessee, and I think is a great way to support the notion of thinking about cost and out-of-state tuition as an economic growth engine if it's managed correctly. And I think the law school is a fabulous example. I don't have the undergraduate numbers committed to memory right now, but I can get those for you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Please.
Just want to say, Mr. Chairman, I'd be remiss to not thank, of our LGI presidents, 5 of the 6 are here. I think we should all be very frank that everyone is watching this transition. And I've said a couple times, one, this transition is going better than anyone thought it would, and it's going much better than it has in other states. That is largely due, if not entirely due, to these presidents and their teams, plus Lauren Collier on our staff, who kind of lives focus. I'm grateful to each of you. I would say we have had hiccups, but there's an instant phone call, and we just talk as colleagues, and we figure it out. So I'm very grateful to all of the presidents at those institutions and the work they've done. Thank you.
Commissioner Coben.
Actually, I wanted to say something similar, Mike. I wanted to welcome President Rudd to the big table and say how nice it is to have a representative of the LGIs with us here. And I also wanted to ask, you have been elected by the other presidents to represent them here at our meeting. And is there going to be some turnover? Are you going to serve a term?
Yes, we've committed to turning this over and rotating this among
Yes.
the presidents. Absolutely. We plan on doing that on an annual basis. So every president will rotate through this opportunity.
You had the hot seat of being the first, but thank you so much.
Happy to do it, and it's nice to be at the big table because every time I go to Kentucky, I sit at the small one. So
Thank you, Dr. Rudd. Okay, any further questions about these reports? All right, I, at the outset of the meeting, neglected a housekeeping issue that we do need to take care of, and that's the taking of attendance. And unless there's an objection, I would like the minutes and the record to reflect that we have not had any voting members leave or come since the inception or since the beginning of the meeting. Yeah.
Yes. Do not leave.
Okay, let's call the roll, please.
Okay, Chairman Cope.
Here.
Dr. Dishner. Here. Secretary of State Trey Hargett. Here. Dr. Morrison. Pam Coben.
Here.
Treasurer Lillard.
Here.
Mintha Roach. Here. Mr. Frank Watson. Mr. Wharton. Comptroller Wilson. Vernon Stafford.
Here.
Jeremy Chisenhall. Here. Jimmy Johnston. Mr. Chair, we have 10 voting members.
Very good. We have a quorum. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the election of officers for the year 2017-2018. And at this point, I will open the floor for nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to nominate you to serve yet another year as chairman of the commission.
All right, upon that, I appreciate the nomination. I'm actually going to pass the gavel down to Commissioner Coben, who will resume responsibility for running the meeting at this point forward.
Well, if there's no objection, what I think we ought to do is consider the following nominations that will come as one single slate, and we'll take a verbal vote at the end of all the nominations, if that's in agreement with everybody here. Okay. Well, then, I will restate my nomination for Evan Cope as our chairman, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll now seek nominations for the vice chair of the East Grand Division. Is there a nomination?
It's my pleasure to nominate Commissioner Roach for that position.
We'll now seek nominations for the vice chair from the West Grand Division.
We need a second on that nomination.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's true, we do. Is there a second? Thank you. Now, nomination for the vice chairman from the West Grand Division.
Commissioner Coben, it would be my honor to nominate Commissioner Stafford.
Is there a second? Thank you, Frank. We need a nomination for the secretary, and I would like to nominate Mr. A.C. Wharton.
Second.
Is-
Sorry.
Seeing that these nominations have been made, I would seek a voice vote. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, and I will return the gavel to you, Chairman Cope.
Thank you, Commissioner Coben. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like the record to reflect that if you don't show up to the meeting, you end up being the secretary.
Let this be a lesson, a warning to everybody. Make sure you attend your meeting. Thanks very much. I appreciate that very much. All right, next order of business, post-secondary education authorization action items.
Dr. Bellerchase.
Dr. Bellerchase.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, Director Kraus, members of the Commission. Good afternoon. I have 4 action items for your consideration today. The first item is in Section 2A. The Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions has recommended that those institutions listed in 2A be given reauthorization as follows. There's 30 institutions for regular authorization. What that means is they've been authorized for more than 2 years and they don't have any conditions. They're meeting all the minimum standards. 13 institutions for temporary authorization, and what that means is that they've been authorized for less than 2 years, but they are meeting all the minimum standards at this time. And then there's 1 institution for conditional authorization. That institution is not meeting our minimum financial standards right now, so the condition is they have to send in quarterly financial reports until the next reauthorization cycle. So that's the first action item.
Very good. Any questions of Dr. Bellerchase? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
The motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
The institutions listed in Section 2B and the new programs listed in Section 2C have also been recommended by the committee for temporary authorization and approval, respectively.
Very good. Any questions of Dr. Bellerchase? If not, I'll entertain a motion. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, please, ma'am.
Please refer to Section 2D. And in that section are the recommended 8 institutions to receive optional expedited authorization. That's something new that started with the Higher Education Authorization Act of 2016. In order to be considered for optional expedited authorization, you have to be in good standing with an accreditor that is recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. You have to offer degrees. You have to be eligible for Title IV. You have to be operating lawfully in Tennessee, and you have to have and submit a comprehensive student complaint process. So that is the third action item.
Any questions for Dr. Bellerchase? If not, I'll entertain a motion. There's a motion. Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Watson. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
And lastly, in Section 2E are recommendations for Mr. Miles Burdine, Mr. Larry Griffin, and Ms. Lethea Mann to be reappointed to the Committee on Post-Secondary Educational Institutions for a 3-year term.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, yes,
One
sir.
question, I noticed there is a vacant position, just a status on that one?
Yes, sir. Well, right now we have 11 people. And so we're going to keep it that way until we can do some cleanup. At one point, Director Kraus had two positions on our committee. He was the executive director of TSAC and the executive director of THEC. So in the Higher Education Authorization Act of 2016, they took him from having two appointments to one, which made our committee even. So we're leaving that vacant until we can add another position to make it 13 versus 12.
Thank you. Other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Beller-Chase. Next, Stephen Gentile. 2017-18 proposed operating budgets.
Thank you, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission, Director Kraus. We present to you now the proposed operating budgets for all of higher education institutions for 2017-18. These are very important to us as an agency. Not only are we tasked with making sure that everything is accurate and things are balanced, but also we come back to these throughout the year. In agenda item 3, you'll see about 10 tables. You'll find 2,984 values there. We will go through them one by one, but they're all very important because they help us address questions when members of the General Assembly ask. When the governor's office needs some quick information about what the tuition level at Dyersburg proposed $9.4 million is for 17-18, we can get back to them as quickly as possible. When our counterpart in, say, Ohio asks us this information, we can get back to them as fast as possible. These are very important to us as they are to the institutions. And then after we act on them today, we send them on to the Department of Finance and Administration, where they then prep for both the fiscal year 18-19, but also reconcile the budget that they have in front of them. That said, we do have new members on the commission, and in the past we haven't really discussed what this looks like to you guys. On this multicolored institutional colored slide here, this gives you an idea of what this process is. First, these budgets start at the institution level, whether that's at Volunteer State Community College or at Austin Peay State University or at UT Martin. The presidents and chancellors will meet with their vice chancellors and vice presidents, with the deans, with the department chairs to figure out what the priorities are, and then they'll settle on a budget. And the governing boards, as you can see at TBR, UT system, they are tasked with, first of all, reviewing those budgets, as the staff at those systems will do, but also in approving those budgets, as the Board of Regents will do, and the UT Board of Trustees will do as well. That dotted line around what we now know as the LGIs, in the Focus Act, their budgets are still to be approved by their own locally governed board, but also Tennessee Board of Regents will approve them as well, looking primarily at their debt ratios. That is still over the coverage of TBR, and they're looking at their revenue to debt ratio and making sure it's 1.5 times, 2 times, meeting that criteria. Yes,
and just to give some history for those that are maybe not aware, this stems from primarily the last time that higher education debt was sold in a large offering. It was packaged together as one bond deal that included the debt that the LGIs now hold. The Board of Regents, I think, has been incredibly both helpful and transparent in saying the statute empowers the Board of Regents to make what Stephen just described, a fundamental decision about whether or not the university is able to meet its debt obligations. I think we all know it would require a very bizarre and outlandish set of circumstances for a university to be even close to that posture. So I just think it's an important to remember the history there, that this was dictated largely due to the 2013 bond offering.
Thank you, Director Kraus. Then we receive these items in June and July, review them, and then prep them for F&A and for the commission. But in actuality, this process takes place going back to November, when we met here in November for our commission meeting. Our commission recommendation of this past year of $48 million and our tuition guidance recommendation that we give, from that moment, the institutions start planning for that following fiscal year. They get a sense of where things are going. Those are very important to them. The governor's budget, when that comes out in late January, February, the legislative action up through April. I was speaking to the CFO, Alan Thomas of MTSU, a couple of days ago. On April 1, they're looking at what's happening in the General Assembly and start having those meetings with the deans and the chairs to prep them for their budget meetings with the president and then their own governing board. May to June, you guys remember back in May, due to focus, we now have, as an agency and the commission, will set binding tuition ranges and tuition and fee ranges. I'll go over that in a moment. But that is also happening in May, and that also impacts this operating budget because we are looking at tuition revenue, for example. And then the governing boards will set tuition roughly in June in time for them to submit their operating budgets to us in July. And then from now until October, the institutions are taking in, well, how much did enrollment actually increase? What will our tuition revenues be for 17-18? And in October and November, we start receiving revised operating budgets, working on them on our staff to prepare to present them to you for action in January of next year. I'll go briefly over this, but it will set the stage for our tuition discussion. We received $1.5 billion in total recurring. That's an increase of 6.7% over last year. This is for all of higher education, from Dyersburg State to UT Space Institute. An additional $18 million in non-recurring. A lot of that going to Drive 55 initiatives, research initiatives at UT Space Institute, for instance, for a total operating of $1.47 billion. Now, that last bullet point, we received $55.1 million in addition from where we were last year for our formula units. Those are our community colleges, universities, and TCATs. 30 was going directly to salary. Others was going to fund the increase in outcomes. We used that number back in May to recommend to you our binding tuition ranges. And as you'll recall, this commission approved a 0 to 4% tuition range. The institutions took that, and then they went back to their boards and went through the numbers and presented these tuition increases. And you can see these are the universities. I'll show you the community colleges as a sector and TCATs on the next slide. I'm happy to report everyone fell within the range, in many cases going well below that range. Our minimum being 1.77% at UT Chattanooga. And an average of 2.64% at universities. At community colleges, an increase of 2.6%. At TCATs, an increase of 2.63%. For comparison purposes, we are doing full-time students 15 credit hours. That is what we are tasked with doing with our binding ranges. We also set ranges for, you guys set ranges and approved ranges for tuition and mandatory fees. We set that at 0 to 4% as well. So seeing where that fell for all the universities, again, we had some go quite low on the combined total of tuition, mandatory fees. Mandatory fees, as a reminder, student fees, library fees, athletic fees, those fees that every student has to pay, but is separate from tuition. And you see where we range for the universities. An average of 2.66%. Yes.
A question here, or should we wait?
You can ask questions as you like.
Well, I would love to hear from Mr. Miller. How in the world did UT Chattanooga and UT Martin? They did very well in keeping these increases low, and then let's see. President White from Austin Peay was here earlier.
She's right there.
Oh, there she is. How did you all do that and do so well?
With stable enrollment and state support.
Okay.
Every institution knows there's an absolute corollary between state support and tuition. And when state support is stable, predictable, and modestly increasing, you can really hold tuition low if you have stable enrollment. And we do right now. We're growing enrollment at Martin. Everyone knows there has been some enrollment decline. Chancellor Carver, who you heard from earlier, is doing a phenomenal job at growing enrollment at that institution, which will really help hold tuition down on a per student basis.
You would say it's the consistent enrollment or growing enrollment. That is the key factor in those two schools
Yes, and state support.
and state support.
Our commitment to try to get at the HEPI, the Higher Education Price Index, or below each year, or below, we're actually challenging chancellors to make recommendations to the president below that next year, is contingent upon predictable state support. If you look at a model over 10 or 20 years, which we graph all the time, Tennessee has had wild swings, and those swings have gotten deeper as they fluctuate. And when state support is somewhat predictable, you can really predict and hold down tuition. That's the key. If you have sharp decreases in state support, we operate on almost entirely fixed cost. I'm sorry, I'm giving a lecture. I'll stop. But on entirely fixed cost, we can't cut cost the way marginal revenue declines.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get a state budget with the sharp decline, we're already committed for that fiscal year. There is no margin to cut. You've got to pay those bills regardless. So that equilibrium is just critical. It doesn't need to be big increases. Predictable is the key.
Thank you for the question. And I concur. We are really trying to keep our fixed costs at a low enough level that we can provide adequate services to students. And we've had a significant enrollment increase. Last year, we had one of the largest increases in the state. We'll have another significant increase this year. But what it really does mean, too, is we grow. At some point, we will have to grow our operating budget to meet the needs of all the students who are coming in. But we try not to do that in a way that disadvantages the students. So we really try to be very intentional about serving them so that they can be successful, but growing at a pace that is something that doesn't give a heartburn to the students. And frankly, we have one of the lowest operating budgets in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Moving forward on the sector tuition and fee increases, we are in the twos. We had a 0 to 4% cap at 4%. We are in the twos across all the sectors, the universities, community colleges, and TCATs, which allow us, and let Director Krause take a picture of this.
I've got to tweet it. Sorry.
Sorry. You'll want to tweet this one right here. Allows us to have this low tuition increase, tuition and fees increase that we've had now for 3 years in a row, going back to the beginning of the decade, from 2010 on. Look at that consistency. It's been fantastic. And of course, to Mr. Miller's point, the state has been very good to higher education these last few years. The economy's been fantastic. That in Tennessee, that has allowed for that as well. But Governor Haslam's, the Commission's commitment, the General Assembly's commitment to higher education has indeed led to a situation where institutions can go with this tuition and fees increase. I can't speak for Dr. DiPietro, but he would reference Greece 2, I believe, as being the last time that they were able to keep it this low and sustainable.
Greece was in the theaters the last
Greece
time.
was it Greece or Greece 2?
Greece 1.
Greece 1. Okay, we were wrong about that. I was wrong about that. We had a 15-minute conversation about that yesterday.
We're not
so
sure
Greece
what
1.
Greece
So
is,
going back further than Greece 2. Now I'd like to hand it over to Taylor Odell. He's the one who put this 2,984 values together and worked through them. Yes, Mr. Miller.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
The May timeframe for binding ranges. So we have to really pay attention to these now. That word binding is just really important. We had Memphis come forward. I shouldn't say just Memphis. The health sciences came forward and wanted to set part of their professional program tuition in April this year, and we did that. And it gives a great deal of predictability then to enrolling students and students who are evaluating universities. There was a lot of discussion about why can't we do that all the time? And we would be interested in exploring setting tuition earlier than our June meeting. But if we don't get ranges until May, then we can't set it until June. Is there any interest in setting those ranges earlier?
I think I'm gonna ask Stephen to talk specifically as well. I would just say this: I think in this first year of figuring out all of these things relative to focus, we're interested in looking at everything. Here, potential options: the November THEC range, unless altered, would become binding, giving you all that planning time. As you know, though, we get cut a little bit between a rock and a hard place because we do need to see what the General Assembly's action is. And so my fear would be in trying to build in predictability. Given, and to be very frank, I want the General Assembly's budget process to play out, because if we tell students something's going to be predictable and then something swings, I worried we will have breached some trust. That being said, I think we are, and I'm Dr. Nolan, I've seen other presidents nodding. I think we are absolutely open to exploring different ways to do this that build in the predictability. At the same time, being very cognizant that until the General Assembly releases a budget, we don't know exactly what funds will be available. Stephen, I know you've thought through this.
We have, and I want to first address your initial point. We always want to be at a point where we're doing what's best for the institutions and for the governing board. So it just comes to how confident are we in what's going to be finalized in the General Assembly. But we are, and Director Krause is right. This year, in the first year of focus, we did think about an extended timeline just to make sure that the governing boards were getting into place at the LGIs. That was very important. But going forward, we will certainly see how we can do that better in a more timely fashion, I should say.
Let's
Mike,
reprise that this fall.
Yeah, the only
together.
It would really help, particularly around scholarshiping and recruitment, where you can get really clear numbers to do scholarshiping on the back end, and be competitive with other places that have set their budget well in advance.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to ask Taylor to go over the general trends that do inform us on not just our recommendations in the future, but also policy as we look to make higher education affordable and effective. I'll ask Taylor to please come up and go through.
Thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, Chairman Cope, Director Krause, and members of the Commission. As Stephen mentioned, we're going to run through the general revenues and expenditures for our community colleges and universities over time and talk about some of those trends and how they've played out with increased state support and tuition revenues over time as well. So I'd like to begin with the university sector. These university revenues are on a base of $2.3 billion, and you'll see the four major pieces of the pie, and this is for the 17-18 operating budget year. Tuition and fees clearly make up a majority of revenues for the universities. That other category are revenues from there derive from development funds, patents, external contracts and grants, private philanthropy, and local appropriations. And that sales and services, which is a very small portion of university revenues, you'll also see that in the community college sector as well. That is from the direct sale of educational activities, thinking about testing services, university presses, any student dining that is not an auxiliary enterprise. E&G revenues for universities and community colleges, as well as all of our typically other formula and non-formula units, are expected to increase about 2.3% from the 16-17 fiscal year as well. This is a longitudinal trend of those university revenues, and as Mr. Miller and President White were previously discussing, you see a decline in the relative proportion of those state appropriations to our universities over time, and an increase in the share of that coming from tuition and fees. However, over the last several fiscal years, you can visually detect that that trend has slowed and is slightly correcting as well. In that 07-08 fiscal year, the state appropriations accounted for approximately 44% of the total university revenues, compared to the 17-18 year, where that will only comprise approximately 30%. For university expenditures, these expenditures total about $2.2 billion. As a reminder, that revenue was on a base of $2.3 billion. These Areas that are grouped, instruction, public service, research, and academic support, are what we consider the core academic expenditures of the institution. Instruction, public service, and research are all supported by that academic support function. And so if we think of expenditures in that areas, such as computer labs, curriculum design and development to support those students. And then student services and institutional support also make up a larger portion of those university expenditures over time. Longitudinally, those expenditures are relatively flat over time. I will draw your attention to those bottom four bars as well, that instruction, research, public service, and academic support have consistently occupied a majority, around 60% of university expenditures over time, suggesting that our universities are doing a great job of spending the majority of their funds on those core academic functions of the institutions. To follow up on our discussion about a decline or relative share decline in state appropriations and an increase in tuition and fees at the university sector, this is a portion of a supplemental analysis our staff has been able to do. And what you're looking at is cumulative changes in those tuition and fee revenue and in that state appropriation revenue since the 7-8 fiscal year. And the green line that you see in the middle are those core academic expenditures. And so early on, we did see significant declines in relative state appropriations to our universities, and those were met with equal or growing equal tuition and fee increases so that universities could continue their operation. We are happy to report, though, that that academic expenditures line was well maintained by universities, that losses from state appropriation revenue was supplemented by those increases in tuition and fees. And we find that approximately 70% of those increases in tuition and fees went to those core academic expenditures. So universities did utilize that increased tuition revenue to spend on those core instruction and research purposes. Community college revenues look slightly different from universities. You'll see that tuition and fees and appropriations are nearing a 50-50 share over time with that other and sales and service categories. Of interest, however, is the longitudinal
Taylor,
trend.
I'm sorry, could you go back to the previous
Yes.
slide real quick? I was curious, under the other, what falls in that category for community colleges?
Sure. The other category also includes the similar services to direct sales. Sales and services includes that category, but also for community colleges, local philanthropies, foundation transfers, private direct appropriations, and things of that nature as well.
That part of the pie is going to be bigger for the universities, obviously, than the
Yes.
community colleges, and that's going to be the case always, probably, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we detect historically over time. So longitudinally, we see that community colleges early on experienced a similar change in their payer mix, if you will, in the share of state appropriations and the share of student fees. That change, however, arrested in that 11-12 to 13-14 year as increases in state appropriations outpaced increases in tuition and fees. And we see that the state is continuing year over year to buy a higher portion toward a majority state support for community colleges.
Do you expect that to continue?
Yes, sir. And this graph will better show that change in share over time. So looking back to that 2001-2002 year, we saw where state appropriations did account for a majority of those revenues at community colleges, and students occupied only about 35% of that share. In that 2009-2010 fiscal year, students and the state were almost equal partners in funding community colleges over time. And as I mentioned, that similar to universities, students now do continually occupy student fees, a majority of revenues to community colleges. But you'll see, as I mentioned before, the rate at which the state is increasing investments to our community college sector is outpacing those very frugal and strategic investments and increases in tuition and fees. And so we do suspect that those lines will meet in the coming fiscal years, again, with consistent state appropriations over time and regulated tuition and fee levels.
That suggested that it's a problem over time if the state is continuing to increase appropriation and become a bigger share. Is that sustainable, or is that planned?
We certainly hope that it is sustainable, and because of the community college's inherent mission to serve our communities and workforce development, we certainly do hope that we will move back to a time where the state is the majority shareholder in the community college revenues. However, again, this is very subject to economic times and state availability of funds.
Where does Tennessee Promise figure in? Which line?
Absolutely. Student Promise, student enrollments increased clearly during those first initial cohorts of Tennessee Promise students in those last several fiscal years. And so community colleges at that time, because of our funding through the outcomes-based funding formula, they didn't have outcomes to increase their funding over time. So they saw more students with not an equal increase in their funds over time. However, those students were bringing in tuition and fee revenue, although it was paid from the Tennessee Promise General Fund. So again, as we suspect over time, those student enrollments have maintained fairly steadily for an increase of keeping those Tennessee Promise students present. But as the state continues to increase its investments to the community college sector, we hope that that majority share will move back to the state's portion.
I think what I'm asking is the Tennessee Promise dollars would show up in the red line because they are funneled through the students?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
So community college expenditures, again, look very similar to those university expenditures. They also occupy exactly 60% of community college expenditures, which was the same as the university sector. Community colleges do not engage in the research enterprise, and so you will not see that portion of the pie here. And longitudinally similar to universities, the community college expenditures over time are relatively stable, with those core academic functions of instruction, public service, and academic support maintaining steady above that 60% line, if you will. As Stephen mentioned, we remain here to answer any questions from the Commission, but I will mention that staff have thoroughly reviewed these operating budgets, each of those individual cells, as Stephen mentioned, and we do recommend these operating budgets for approval.
Chairman, one point to Mr. Stafford's point, and some of the other points that have been discussed here today, is that since fiscal year 2010, the state has had significant increases in revenues coming out of the downturn that occurred in fiscal year 9 and before. And, we all hope that that will continue, obviously, as the speaker said. But, I think one thing that's prudent to do is to look at costs, as some of the presidents indicated they're doing here and everything, because the likelihood of variance in the future is relatively great, I think, in that regard, because states' revenues do tend to be cyclical. We're a sales tax dependent state, and so you have to kind of plan that going forward. Also, one thing that's, to some degree is missing from the analysis we went through today is just looking at costs in higher education and how those have been affected over the years versus other types of operations and everything, because, and I know many of our universities have emphasis on that now, and it's a good emphasis because basic operating costs are an issue when you look at a situation where you're depending on, in effect, state appropriations to help balance the budget, if you will, and keep tuition low, which is our overall goal.
Treasurer, appreciate that comment. Other questions for Taylor or Stephen, or comments in general?
Evan,
Commissioner Cogan.
I have a question for both Mr. Miller and President Rudd. I don't know if you all saw an article that was in the Wall Street Journal last week, I believe, about the unsustainability of the increases in tuition and fees for college students all across the country. And they were blaming universities and colleges, too, for increasing their tuition and fees in keeping with the increasing availability of federal grant money for students. I'd love to hear you two comment on that article and what you think about that.
That's actually, I saw the article.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very old
I know.
Theory. I've been in higher education finance for 20 years, and we just don't think that way. We don't budget that way. We don't have any models that look at that. It just doesn't work that way. There may be some corollary that someone can draw, but it really doesn't, university budgeting doesn't work that way. We are a cost-driven budget. And I mentioned earlier that so much of our costs are fixed. We have very little margin to control. And you budget to cover cost, and when those costs are driven by changes in technology or other things, that's really what drives your budget and personnel cost. But I just don't believe there's a university in the country that says, let's model future financial aid and build a budget to capture that. It's an old theory that we should work together to debunk, but it's.
I saw that as well. I think there are a couple of points I would add about cost, and 80% of our costs are personnel. And so workload is the critical issue. How do you allocate workload within a university structure? And for us, we've looked very carefully at how we allocate, how we monitor workload. The best thing that happened in the state of Tennessee was the movement to an outcomes-based formula. And the reason that that's so important is you no longer are looking at just delivering. So when you're paid to deliver educational services and you're paid by the hour of what you deliver, you're going to deliver more and more and more of those. And so, I think I'd shared with Mike before, we had degree programs that had 20% more credit hours in them than were needed to graduate because you were paid by the hour that you deliver. And so when you move to an outcomes-based formula, what it then makes you do is look at how can you have that outcome for the most efficient and effective process possible within your workload structure. And it builds efficiency into it. So I think all of us, I think I can speak for the LGI presidents, all of us have had to look at efficiency as a part of this. And so we've moved away from that. What you read in that article, because of the formula in the state, has really mandated that we do it. The nice thing is it's the most effective thing for student cost, student debt. And it's the best thing in terms of overall efficiency for a university.
If I could add to comment on Treasurer Lillard's comments, you must be sitting in our staff meetings because we're using DiPietro metaphors. He says, David, we have a tailwind right now, but we're going to hit a headwind, all the time, and plan for the eventual flattening or reduction of state funds that may be beyond the state's control because we're so revenue dependent. And so our board has taken that very seriously and had us produce a second budget gap to which we have to budget to reallocating about $122 million over the next 3 to 4 budget cycles, and plan to reallocate that much, find savings elsewhere to support the academic mission.
Dr. Tidings, I left you out of that question, but I think the article primarily was focusing on universities. But would you have anything else that you'd want to add?
I think the only thing that I would like to add to it is, again, is what's reflective in the slides, the amount of money that state appropriations that the community colleges and the technical colleges receive has been able to allow the growth in our student enrollment because our students are not going into debt. They're able to attend colleges. In states where that is not occurring, which is probably the majority of them, where they are not receiving sound state support, they are having a decrease in enrollment and they are closing colleges. So at the same time, their citizens are no longer able to avail themselves of higher education. So it is a dramatic difference in what's happening in Tennessee and what's happening across the rest of the state.
Chairman Cope, I hope that the minutes will show the answers that all three of our university and community college representatives have stated, because I think that's an important comment to what is, I think, common thought.
I agree. I hope the minutes reflect that. Other questions for Taylor or Stephen? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the operating budgets.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Commission approve the FY 2017-18 July 1 proposed operating budgets, that we authorize the Executive Director to make appropriate technical adjustments if necessary, and transmit the operating budgets with the Commission's actions and comments to the Department of F&A for their review and approval.
Very good. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second? Second. Commissioner, thank you. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Stephen. All right, next item on the agenda, master plan updates. Stephen Gentile.
Thank you again, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission, Director Kraus. We are going to review today two master plans, one for Roane State Community College, the other for Volunteer State Community College. Master plans have always been important to the institutions and to our state. Their importance is now even elevated as far as the Commission is concerned. When you guys see in November, our November Commission capital outlay recommendations for 2018-19, you might recall that back in May, I believe it was, we presented to you and you approved our capital outlay rubrics and priority guidelines that will guide our November recommendation. Part of that rubric is based on the master plans. Master plans allow institutions to align their strategic plans with 10 years, 15, 20, even 30 years down the line planning for the purposes of their facilities. Director Kraus has implemented a new practice that we've got to participate first with Volunteer State and then again with Roane State, where we actually visited the campuses to hear and see the master plan in action. Commission members were invited, as were local delegation of representatives and senators, and it provided an excellent opportunity to see exactly what it means at Volunteer State to need significant wharf building renovations, or at Roane State to learn about their constellation of campuses and know why that parking lot may need a facelift and is important and crucial to that community. I'm going to stop talking right now, however, and ask the presidents, first President Whaley and then President Faulkner, and we'll take action in between, to come up and review for us what TSW, the design firm with Woody Giles, have put together for the master plan. TSW has done significant work in the past with our TCAT master plan, the recent Nashville State master plan, Columbia State. They do fantastic work, and President Whaley will present on that master plan. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Right there. Very good. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Executive Director Kraus, Chancellor Tidings. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you this afternoon. I'll try to be thorough and yet brief, and then at any point, of course, that you have any questions, please let me know. Appreciate it very much. Executive Director Kraus's visit with his staff. We had, I think, a good day. Absent the failure of Ralph's Donuts to be open in Cookeville as they traveled to Roane County. We partially rectified that today, but otherwise I think it was a pretty successful day. In all seriousness, I'd like to start out by letting you know, in case you don't, I really like the term, Stephen, constellation of campuses. I'm going to have to borrow that one. The defining or distinctive factor for a lot of folks about Roane State Community College is the large number of campuses that we have. We have a physical location in every county that we serve. So when I tweet out about access and success, that really is important to us. And I'll show you a couple of other slides in a moment that will help, I think, make that even more concrete. But while we're on this slide, I'll let you know that not only the campuses that you're looking at marked by the little balloons, the main campus in Roane County there is number one. We have two campuses that are in the central time zone. So both Fentress and Cumberland in the central, and then the other campuses in the eastern time zone, which make planning meetings sometimes a little bit tricky and challenging, but we get through that. We will focus in just a few minutes, particularly on the Knox County campus, which Roane State is charged to serve Knox and Blount County with nursing and allied health science programs in that region. So I will point that out to you, that Knox County, rather, is, per FTE, our fourth largest campus. And the numbers that you see there in FTE don't include the large number of non-credit or CEU health science hours that we provide at that location. We are widely known for our large number of health science programs, so we not only graduate those folks to the workforce in a credit sense, but then they come back to us for their continuing education to retain their certifications. And this past year, just under 6,000 students, former students and others were served by Roane State in a non-credit Con Ed situation regarding our health science programs. Why are we in all these locations? Well, one reason is our strong desire and our mission, as all of our institutions have, to help with workforce needs. And when you look at these unemployment rates, understand again, these are January numbers, and thankfully, if you looked at those numbers today, there would be quite a change for the positive, for the better. However, and historically, when you look at Roane State's service area, there are some of the higher and highest percentages, unfortunately, of unemployment in the state located in the Roane State service area. For many years, in fact, one of our counties had the highest unemployment rate, which topped out at one point around 16 or 17%. So being in these locations, being in these counties, and providing access to higher education right where these students are, right where these folks are, we feel is dramatically important and beneficial. In addition, when we think about access, think about topography and geography. When you look at the Roane County campus, the Harriman campus in blue, and then you drive up to Campbell County, which is a very beautiful drive, you're going to spend an hour and a half on the road. So it is not enough for us, we believe, to talk about access, meaning students coming to our main campus or coming to a campus that is over an hour's drive away. Even when we have all these campuses, that does not always translate into a just across the street journey, given the fact that these are mountainous regions and the campus may be just on the other side of the mountain from you, so you could get there pretty quickly if you had a helicopter. But if you have to drive around the mountain to get there, it still may take 30 minutes or longer to get to the nearest location. So access is clearly who we are, and in providing that access, we've identified some space needs that I want to highlight for you, particularly when we talk about Knox County, which is the bar there in blue. Knox County is certainly the most significant space needs that we have. Cumberland County and Scott County are a little more unique. We do have needs there, but those are primarily of a science lab nature and some things that we have in the works, hopefully one day to address those. But Knox County, again, that mentioned to you from the standpoint of all the health science credit programs that we offer, all of the non-credit CEU training that we do there, we are just flat out of space there. And it is going to be imperative for us just to continue the mission that we are on now, let alone thinking about growing any new programs, reaching any new students. Everyone in this room knows the heavy demand for nursing and allied health science professionals, aging populations, things of that nature. So the need is not going to go away. The need is getting greater, and we want to have the physical facilities that we need in order to serve those folks and those needs. Let me quickly, and this is the last slide, the key capital outlay recommendations. No surprise, Knox County is number one on that list, the most significant space needs of any of our campuses. We have no opportunities for expansion. We are landlocked in the site where we are. And not only are we landlocked, but the visibility and the access to that campus could be improved. You have to really try to find the Knox County campus. Even though we're certainly grateful for the space that we have, it is not what we need. We need a number of things that we've highlighted there, including but not limited to nursing simulators, a mock hospital space, a dedicated EMT paramedic lab, and additional space for existing programs and programs, frankly, that the hospitals and our other partners in the region are asking us to start up, but we can't do that right now because we just don't have a place to put them. Quickly, when we talk about the other things on our recommendation list, the East Tennessee Agricultural Expo Center, actually named after Jim Henry and Benny Stafford, is important not only to Roane State, but I want to point out the importance of the Expo Center to the region. It is located on the Roane County campus, and it is not only a place for community to gather, for folks to be able to enjoy a family entertainment, but when we talk about economics and direct impact to local economies, there are a number of hotels and restaurants, just to point out one example, that are located near the Roane County campus that have told us time and time and time again that the only reason they are able to keep their doors open some years is because of the traffic that they get from the folks who are coming to the Expo Center, seeing the things that we have there. So the impact is very real, and it's not only benefit to us, to our students, to the community, but also to our businesses in Roane County as well. And you see there the things that we need to put into the Expo Center to bring that up to the place that it needs to be, and that would also permit us to compete for a number of shows that we lose out on because we do not have these upgrades currently in that facility. Lastly, I'll mention the Anderson County Training Facility. Roane State is in two places in Anderson County. On the western end, we have our largest campus, the Oak Ridge Branch campus, where we have a head count just north of 2,000 students. And then in the eastern side of the northeastern side of the county, we have the Anderson County training facility that currently is operated out of a leased premises that we have in a collaboration, a partnership with the city of Clinton and with the county. It is a tremendous opportunity for us to be in that end of the county because although when we think about Oak Ridge and you think about Oak Ridge National Lab and Oak Ridge Associated Universities and Y-12, those are all closer to our main campus in Oak Ridge, but the main thrust of their business and industry, manufacturing in particular, is actually in this region, is actually in the northwestern end of the county in Clinton. And so we have a place there to provide mechatronics training, injection molding, everything and anything that those businesses come to us and tell us that they need, we're providing it. And again, we're providing it out of a lease facility now that we're thankful for, but frankly is just not what we need as far as facilities, as far as square footage. You can see some of the highlights there that what we really need is about 30,000 gross square feet for the current and advanced manufacturing programs that we see coming on board. Not even to mention, and my folks will be smiling when I say this, that we have to vacate the leased premises that we're in currently for about 3 weeks because the Anderson County Fair runs us out. And so we move everything out for 3 weeks and then we move everything back in. And my idea of having one of the robots sell popcorn and just leave it where it is didn't fly, so we have to move all that. As you know, TCAT Knoxville is opening a facility in Anderson County, and what our hope is to be able to work together and partner together in a shared space situation. But of course, that the details of that are unknown through no fault of anyone's right now, because of course the TCAT is determining what its space needs are, going through its planning to get that facility designed and built. So our goal would be to share space, but that's dependent on whether or not there is adequate space in that facility for both of us to do what we need to do and do it at the level that we need to do it. So with that, I'll pause for questions. Please.
The lengthy bar you have in need in Knox County, I wonder if you have tried to coordinate with Pellissippi on those needs. Is there some kind of dialogue there?
Yes, and I can't say enough about Dr. Wise and our partnership and collaboration with Pellissippi State, particularly in our workforce areas. For these kinds of programs, because they are so equipment intensive, the problem we usually run into is not space to teach the classes, but because that teaching space also has to have expensive equipment and equipment that takes up a lot of room, it makes it difficult for anyone to really really house us, if you will. And that, again, will be sort of the key question as we work with the TCAT to hopefully try to see if both of us will have enough square footage in that facility to do what we need to do from a mechatronics and advanced manufacturing standpoint. In Knox County, again, when you're talking about hospital simulators and EMT simulators, they take up a lot of space.
Dr. Tidings, do you find that Pellissippi is reaching out to this market that's evidently there in Knox County?
They are not replicating the program that is taught by Roane State. That's the agreement that they have. Roane State is the only one that's teaching that program in this area.
Did not know that.
I should have made that more clear, yes.
Well, I possibly should have known. Thank you.
Pellissippi offers the general education courses to the students who become our allied health science students, and we do that at the Knox County campus.
Questions?
Thank you.
So we'll take these, Stephen, one at a time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so before us now is the approval of the Roane State Community College Master Plan, and I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Gentile.
Thank you, President Whaley. Moving on to volunteer state, there are several members on our commission who made it to volunteer state: Treasurer Lillard, Chairman Cope, Commissioner Coman as well. We had a fantastic time at Vol State and really appreciated the conversation and the tour. I'd like to welcome President Faulkner to review the master plan.
Thank you, Stephen. Chairman Cope and Director Krause and members of the Commission, thank you for this opportunity to talk about our master planning process and the result of that. Thank you to those of you who came and visited us on the campus. We hope it was an event that gave you some insights that maybe you wouldn't have gotten if you had not been able to come and be with us on that occasion. We also worked with TSW out of Atlanta in our process, and suspect that some of the things that we did were equivalent with the things that Roane State went through. We went through a very extensive research process and gathered lots of data to make well-informed decisions. One of the data points that we looked at was participation rate. I think you have this map in the handouts that you've received. This shows the 4 locations that were considered in this master plan, and also the participation rate of the population in those areas. This also gives me an opportunity to brag on Vol State having the highest participation rate of any community college in Tennessee in terms of serving our service area, meeting the needs of our service area. We also need to know where our current students are. And so this scatter map, each dot represents 5 students that are attending Vol State. I haven't counted them to be sure they're all there, but I trust TSW. You can see very clearly that our student population is concentrated around the Gallatin campus and the proximity to the Nashville metro area and around the Cookeville campus in the eastern portion of our service area. We also want to look at where our future students may be coming from. And so we looked at population projections for the next 10 years. Notice that Wilson County has the highest projected population increase. If I go back to that slide on participation rate, you can see that very light area just below the Gallatin campus caption. That's Wilson County. And so while we have a projected high population increase there, we have a low participation in Wilson County. And I'll return to that point near the end of my presentation. This slide is much too busy to read very well, particularly if you're more than about 3 feet from the screen. But it is a synopsis of looking at what the jobs are going to be. It's not enough to know where our students are and how they're distributed, but we also have to consider what are the potential programs that they'll want to participate in when they become volunteer state students. And so this represents a culmination of research across the 3 workforce investment areas that are part of the Vol State service area. TSW did a very good job of engaging the entire campus in this effort. Surveys went out to every faculty and staff member and every student to do online surveys, had almost a 50% response rate from our regular faculty and staff employees and a good response rate from our students. They not only surveyed the students, but they came on campus and had student focus groups, and they conducted this activity, which they call an idea wall, where students are able to vote for the ideas that they think are most important. And that leads me to this slide. One of the questions they asked the students was, what one word would you use to describe the physical campus today? This is a word cloud document. The larger the word, the more times it showed up in their response. And so this gives me a chance to brag on our physical facilities team. What a wonderful job they do keeping our campus clean and attractive. There was a comprehensive study of our Gallatin campus. Since it's the largest, they looked at things like pedestrian flow and how long it took to walk from any point on the campus to the center of the campus. They looked at vehicular flow to try to determine where it's best to restructure our roads and driveways. They did a thorough examination of all of our facilities and applied the THEC space utilization model. And as is mentioned in your handouts, we have needs for open labs and offices. The red bar is a representation of the change that occurred with the opening of our new humanities building this past fall of 2016. And so with this data, we believe we have put together a comprehensive approach that leads us to a master plan that supports the 4 vision areas of the Tennessee Board of Regents and the 4 goal areas of Vol State's strategic plan. So let me just give you some highlights. In the eastern part of our service area, the Livingston campus, our most significant planning challenge there is to decide what to do with this building that we purchased a few years ago. It's literally spitting distance of our buildings. It was a manufacturing facility, and frankly, we purchased it mainly for self-protection because we didn't know what might go into that manufacturing facility. But our planning challenge now is to determine how to use this approximately 10,000 square feet. At this point, our decision is to use that to support a construction management program starting in the fall of 2018. Our Cookeville Higher Education campus, a facility that we share with TCAT Livingston and with Tennessee Tech, has some physical challenges as well. Right now, about 1/3 of the roof is being replaced, and that project will be finished in about a week, and then we'll have to look to replace the other 2/3 of the roof. There's some HVAC challenges in that area, but our biggest problem right now, which is a good problem to have, is parking. Our enrollment has exceeded expectations, and we have a real parking challenge there. There are actually 2 pieces of deeded property. The pink one at the bottom is where the current building and parking is located. The pink one at the top or toward the north is undeveloped area, and so we're trying to see if that can be developed into some parking. And the experts from TSW recommended that we also look at the blue piece of property, which is currently privately owned, and see if we might be able to acquire that piece of property as part of our future for that location. Coming back to the western part, the Highland Crest campus located in Springfield, Tennessee, is an excellent building. It's new. It was built in 2011. It has been a growing campus. In the spring of 2014, the city of Springfield and Robertson County deeded that building to the state, to Volunteer State. At that time, we also purchased an additional acre that would be to the left of the picture that you're seeing for potential parking, and we obtained an option for 5 years on 4 acres that would be to the right of the building in this picture, so we have an opportunity to expand there as well. Back to the Gallatin campus, which again, as our largest campus, was the one that received the most of the attention. The wharf building project has already been mentioned. This is a priority need. We appreciate this body approving that as a suggestion, and appreciate the governor and the General Assembly making an appropriation of $4.18 million to start that renovation project. This is one of the original buildings to the campus, and so it's 70s era, and it houses a majority of our science labs. In this day and age where there's an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, math, we want the facilities that our students are using to be top-notch and cutting edge. You can see in this picture that we still have blackboards in those classrooms. In conjunction with that renovation, we received a Drive to 55 capacity grant to add a wing to the wharf building to house our new mechatronics building. This is actually on the campus of our sister institution, Cleveland State, but is going to be the inspiration for that project. We've had a kickoff meeting already and have another meeting scheduled to begin the planning process for this construction. One of the things that was high on the students list was to renovate our student dining area. You can see we've made some upgrades in terms of installing some computer stations and some flat screen TVs, but it still looks very institutional. And so we want to honor our students and give them a nice place. Our students tend to spend a lot more time on campus, even though we're not a residential campus. And so they need places where they can feel comfortable and where they can study together. That's why another recommendation was some upgrades to our Thigpen library. Libraries, as all of you know, are no longer just warehouses for books. There are lots of other places and lots of places where students study and work collaboratively. Another thing that was high on the students list was to improve our outdoor spaces. I think there's a little bit of envy going on with our new humanities building pictured on the right-hand side here. We installed a very nice space for students to be able to congregate and relax or study together. In the center of our campus, we have this lawn on the left-hand picture we call the quad, and frankly, that's all it is a place we mow. So we're going to look very seriously about how we can optimize the use of that portion of the facility as well. Our entrance on Nashville Pike, our main entrance, is also 70s era, and so a recommendation was made that we upgrade the front entrance to our campus and the Nashville Pike facing side of the campus. This is actually the back entrance to our campus, very attractive, very collegiate looking entrance, and so we'd like to duplicate that on our front entrance. We're working with the city of Gallatin to have signalized crosswalks at that entrance, and then we'll work with them on the renovation. When we add these buildings, excuse me, I've got one more slide I was about to skip. To the east of our campus is what we call, surprisingly, the East Campus. It's a cluster of 5 buildings that were built in 1985 and purchased by the college in 1999 and put into use in 2000. The buildings are not well built, and they weren't built to be academic buildings. And so the recommendation of the plan is that we replace these buildings. They do house academic programs. They do house continuing ed and adult education, several of our administrative offices. And so moving them out of this space would entail creating new space somewhere, possibly back on this same piece of land. And so with those additions and in the master plan, the parking that is called for, we would be using a good portion of our 120 acres. And so again, there are 51 acres shown here in the blue that are adjacent to our Gallatin campus, and the recommendation of the plan is that we attempt to acquire that if possible. And then returning to my comments about Wilson County, we do believe with the decreased participation but the increased growth in Wilson County that we need to have a location in Wilson County. We put out an RFP that closed day before yesterday. We received 1 qualified bid. The cost opening process will be on August 2nd, and so at that point we'll see how we can proceed to perhaps have a campus in Wilson County. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, at the risk of being identified as a homer, I've had the personal privilege to work with Dr. Faulkner over the last several years, almost on a daily basis, and his ability to bring on the new facilities, the square footage, the capital investment, the roadways, the beautification of the campus. I couldn't say it better than the pictures show it. But I want to assure you that the capital investments of this type are noticed by the local employer base, and they see it as an investment that matches their private investment. They also see it in the workforce context, that this is about their existing workforce, but it's also about the workforce to come. So with the thanks to the General Assembly, state constitutional officers, this body, Chancellor Tidings, and the leadership of Dr. Faulkner, can't say enough about Volunteer State.
That's a great point, and that's a great perspective. It really is. Any other comments or questions?
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say, Dr. Faulkner, thank you for spending half a day with us when we were out there with Director Krause and Chairman and others the other day for the site visit. And I'm very glad the Wharf Chemistry or Science building is going to get a renovation and get the addition that you mentioned that the East Campus will ultimately be dealt with, because we saw the need for that when we were out there. So
I'll just echo. I know Commissioner Coven, go ahead.
I'd just like to say, for the members of the commission, when you get the opportunity to make one of these on-site visits, it's so helpful. Without our being there, we're relying on what the architects are telling us that we should or shouldn't do. And Treasurer Lillard and Chairman Cope and I were among the group that visited Ball State that day, and the experience was immeasurably helpful in seeing this presentation today. I would highly recommend you doing it when you get the opportunity.
And I concur completely. Dr. Faulkner, thank you.
Thank you. Certainly, there's an open invitation to any members of the commission that would like to come out for a tour. Just let us know.
Thanks very
Thank you.
much. All right, no further questions. I'll entertain a motion to approve the master plan for Volunteer State Community College.
move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify so by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Brett Gibson with the fun part.
Spoken like an attorney.
Yeah.
Thank you, I think, Chairman Coe. Thank you, Commission members. Yes, my material is a bit of housekeeping, not nearly interesting enough for a PowerPoint presentation, but unfortunately necessary. That's right. As many of you are aware, Roman numeral 5A in your materials, THEC is responsible for the administration of a fee waiver program for state employees. State employees can take one course one course at a time, up to 4 per year, free of tuition. So we promulgate, or the Commission promulgates rules for that program. Some recent legislative enactments have required some changes to our rules for this program, including adding the 6 state university boards language because of focus, and then also one minor exemption for state employees who are required to work overtime more than 4 weeks per year, so that they can take more than one course at a time, instead of limiting it to that one course per term. And there's some other minor just language updates in there as well that are in your materials.
Brett, do you want to take these? Can we take these as a slate or just one at a time?
We have to have a separate vote on each one, and it has to be a roll call vote.
That's right. That's right.
Per statute. Sorry.
Okay, very good. So, any questions of Mr. Gibson? Hearing none, Ms. Worsborn, please call the roll. Oh, I'm sorry.
Move approval.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Move approval of the
Thank you,
rule
Mr. Treasurer. I have a
revisions.
motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Ms. Worsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt, but the motion needs to be in a
Yes.
particular format.
Oh, I'm so
Dr.
sorry.
Kushner
Okay.
has
Make
the
the
language.
motion. I move that the commission adopt the amended rules as proposed, and that the commission authorize the executive director to make any necessary technical corrections to these rules, including changes suggested by the Tennessee Attorney General's office after review.
That's a good motion. Who wants to second that? Okay, we have a second. Motion and a second. If there's no discussion, I'm going to ask now Ms. Worsborn to call the roll, please.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Trey Hargett. Pam Coven.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Samantha Roach. Frank Watson. Vernon Stafford. Jeremy Chisenhall. Jimmy Johnston.
Aye.
You have 10 votes. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, motion carries. All right, Mr. Gibson, I'll try to get it right next time.
I promised exciting, and of course it has to be really complicated as well. The second item I have is Roman numeral 5B, another rule promulgation that we have related to the statutory discount program for the dependents of teachers, public school teachers, and state employees. Again, statutory enactments have resulted in some inconsistent language in our rules. One of those is, again, the 6 state university boards language, and then an attorney general's opinion that, in contravention of some language in our rules, the dependents of charter school teachers are also eligible for this benefit. That's about it.
All right, very good. Any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the commission adopt these amended rules as proposed, and that the commission authorize the executive director to make any necessary technical corrections to these rules, including changes suggested by the Tennessee Attorney General's office following review.
Motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? If not, Ms. Worsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Trey Hargett. Tim Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Samantha Roach. Aye. Frank Watson. Vernon Stafford. Jeremy Chisenhall.
Aye.
Jimmy Johnston.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, we have 10 ayes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item 5C, another rule promulgation issue. The legislature enacted Public Chapter 166 this past session, which transferred rule promulgation authority for immunizations of newly matriculating students in our higher education institutions from THEC to the governing boards relating to meningococcal disease and hepatitis B. So we're simply repealing these rules.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Commission adopt the proposed repeal of the student immunization rules and that the Commission authorize the Executive Director to make any necessary technical corrections suggested by the Tennessee Attorney General's Office following review.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Worsborn, please call the roll.
Chairman Coe.
Aye.
Dr. Dishner.
Aye.
Trey Hargett. Tim Coben.
Aye.
Treasurer Lillard.
Aye.
Samantha Roach.
Aye.
Frank Watson. Vernon Stafford. Jeremy Chisenhall.
Aye.
Jimmy Johnston.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, we have 10 ayes.
Very good. Motion carries.
And moving on past rules, my last item is an internal THEC rule of procedure. Sorry, I'm moving away from the microphone. These rules of procedure were first adopted by the Commission in 1969 to help carry out the purposes, and they're mostly related to quorum, officers, things like that. They've grown outdated over the years a little bit, but Focus Act actually required some updates too. The member appointment process has been updated. We updated the statement of authority of the Commission via Focus Act. We clarified the term limits on the chair position, and we have stricken outdated language referring to 3 standing commission committees that no one in this building had ever remembered actually being used. The commission, of course, still has the authority to establish an advisory committee whenever they decide it is necessary. We recommend approval.
All right, here the staff recommendation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second on the floor? We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next item.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cope, Commission. I'm here to present to you all on the off-campus instruction policy. To give you guys a brief overview, so this is a statutory expectation for the Commission to approve or disapprove all off-campus locations at public institutions in the state. This policy was last revised in 2007, and as a result of focus and kind of bringing it into 2017, we decided to take a closer look at the policy, and this involved a few different steps. Looking at what other states do as it relates to off-campus policies, looking at accrediting agencies and what they do, as well as communicating with our institutions and our systems. How is this policy actually implemented in practice? Coupled with that, we did a massive inventory audit, really taking a look at all the existing off-campus locations that we have in place, determining if they're still active and necessary. And that's a huge shout out and thank you to the systems and institutions for their work on that somewhat tedious process. Through all of that, we came to realize that there were some revisions that needed to be made. 2 particular things that the colleges of applied technology in particular were really kind of lumped into the previous policy. When you think about things like degree versus diploma and some of that language, we found it to be important to create 2 distinct policies. So that's what we have proposed here today. And unless you guys have any questions about the process, I'm going to go ahead and dig right into some of the highlights of the 2 policies as proposed. The first, and I believe there'll be 2 separate votes, one for each policy, to be clear, is the community college and university policy. So one important change is that we recommend returning the center approval to the Commission. So centers, to clarify, are locations that offer complete academic programs. And this is particularly salient to some of the conversations you heard around master plans and some other things today. These are major investments, both in time and finances. And so we thought that this should come again before the commission for approval, and that would happen at quarterly commission meetings.
And Amanda, forgive me, this had previously been a staff action, correct?
That's correct, yes. So in the most recent revision, that was then delegated to the executive director, but we recommend bringing that back out, like I said, because of the significance of these locations. In addition, related to that, we want to clarify the early notification process. So something that we found through this process is that we need to be really explicit about who needs to be made aware and when they need to be made aware about these proposed locations. And finally, relevant to the focus area is really outlining the specific communication and collaboration that we expect among institutions. So prior to a request coming to us, we want to see that there's been collaboration or conversation between institutions that are in that same region, that we're not duplicating efforts and those sorts of things. And we have, like I said, outlined clear steps for that. The second policy, the TCAP policy, which I've already kind of given you a preview of, would align more closely with their accrediting body's designations. So this was a result of really close work with the TBR offices to ensure that we recognize the unique functions of our TCATs. Things like I said earlier about the use of diploma versus degree, really ensuring we're reflecting on that work. And finally, that these locations are specific to for credit courses. So we're looking at credit towards a diploma. There are an array of different things that our institutions do across the state. And so these two policies are specific to diploma or degree credit situations. And so all that to say, I think that the two policies will really help us to improve procedure, to clarify various steps in the policy, as well as help us improve our data. So what we heard earlier today about dual enrollment, really getting a better handle on which of these locations are dual enrollment only, are they serving multiple purposes, and so on. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, Amanda. Questions? So we need to take these individually to understand that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so the first item looks like item number 6B, off-campus instruction in community colleges and universities, and what's the recommendation that we adopt your policy? So the chair will entertain a motion to that effect.
Move it.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Next, item 6C, off-campus instruction, Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. And I assume your recommendation is to adopt the policy?
To approve, yes.
So the chair will entertain a motion to that effect.
Move adoption of the policy.
Have a motion as presented, to adopt as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next Tennessee Reconnect update. Jessica.
And Mr. Chairman, just by way of framing what Jessica's going to present to the commission, we're 14 months out, 13 months actually at this point, from being the only state in the nation with free community college across both traditional students and now adult students. Jessica Gibson has been leading our work internally. You heard Chancellor Tidings reference the efforts going on at the Regent's office. I would say it's a completely seamless effort. We are working together daily, if not hourly. And what Jessica, I think, will do is present to you the product of her and her team and the Board of Regents' work, which is really virtually a day-by-day schedule of what needs to happen between now and next fall. We're very proud of the work that Jessica and her team have done and have complete confidence that next fall it's going to be an incredible time for our state.
Thank you, Director Krause, Chairman Cope, members of the Commission. So as Mike just mentioned, I'm going to give you an update. I do want to say at the very front of this that this is truly a team effort. THEC and TSAC are working really closely together, and also as Chancellor Tidings outlined, we're working very close with TBR, and I would like to recognize TBR in particular on this comprehensive approach that they're taking towards adult learners in light of the Reconnect Grant announcement and the robust partnership that we're developing. So I will start today with just an overview and sort of a kind of a reminder of why we're here. First, the Tennessee Reconnect Grant was signed into law by Governor Haslam on May 24th. It is a last dollar scholarship that will provide adult learners the opportunity to attend a community college or other eligible institution tuition free. It will be available starting fall 2018. Students will need to complete a FAFSA and be determined to be independent according to the FAFSA. They can't have already earned an associate or bachelor's degree, but they can have a certificate. So those with a certificate are eligible to utilize a Reconnect grant for an associate degree. And of course, they have to be admitted to an eligible institution. Once they are enrolled, they need to enroll in 6 hours a semester. They need to maintain continuous enrollment, meaning they can't take a semester off. They have to maintain a 2.0 GPA. And they have to participate in a college success program through a Tennessee Reconnect Community Initiative as determined by THEC. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk specifically about this piece of it, because this is what we get a lot of questions about at this point. And I'll say up front, the College Success Program does not currently exist, and it is not a college success course that a lot of our institutions offer, although that could be part of the College Success Program. I will say this, the vision of a college success program is that adults will be provided wraparound services that help them enroll and persist to graduation without placing an undue burden on them. So we're not asking them to check boxes. We're asking them to participate in activities that can actually help their persistence. This is going to be developed over the next 6 months with the input of our Tennessee Reconnect communities and the eligible institutions. Both the Tennessee Reconnect communities and the institutions will be providing some level of service to the Reconnect grantees, and we will have some clearly defined roles. And of course, it's going to necessitate strong communication, data collection, and partnership between the institutions and the Tennessee Reconnect communities. So we have a lot of work to do between now and fall 2018. The College Success Program development is a piece of that, but there are a whole lot of other things that have to work before fall 2018. So we're creating a couple of different vehicles to make sure this happens. The first is a Reconnect Advisory Council, and this council will really help guide implementation efforts. It is going to have inclusive membership. So we have THEC, TSAC, Tennessee Board of Regents, Tennessee Independent Colleges and Universities Association members, institution representation, and Tennessee Reconnect community representation. We want to ensure perspective, and we want to make sure we're creating feedback loops so that everyone that needs to know is in the know. This group will also assist us in the development of the TSAC rules and in the development of the College Success Program. And they'll be the primary leads in the chain of communication to and from THEC and TSAC. We want to over-communicate. We want to share as much as we can so that information that's really important doesn't fall through the cracks. We've also identified some specific strategy areas, and we plan to create some working groups around these strategy areas. So I'll quickly go over what those are. Programmatic communication, as I mentioned before. We need to make sure that THEC, TSAC, TBR, the institutions, Tennessee Reconnect community, all of the stakeholders are communicating in an effective way. Marketing and messaging, of course, this is the more what we think of as a traditional message. How do we get this information out to adults so that they can take advantage of this grant? Data collection and sharing. Tennessee Reconnect communities, our institutions, TSAC, THEC, we will all be collecting data. We need to make sure we're aligning that collection, that we're also protecting students and their information. Partnerships. This is a fantastic opportunity for us to leverage existing partnerships and build new partnerships with state agencies around Reconnect and with community partners as well. And then finally, the College Success Program development. So these 5 strategy areas are what we're really going to focus on. We have THEC and TSAC staff that have been assigned to lead each strategy area. And as I mentioned, we'll be creating working groups around these as well, and they will include membership outside of THEC and TSAC. So kind of a quick timeline for you. Summer 2017, this is really our planning, our strategy development, our information gathering period. first convening of the Reconnect Advisory Council actually will happen on Monday, this coming Monday. Fall 2017, this is where there's an opportunity to do some cross-institutional sharing of promising practices in serving adult learners. Tennessee Board of Regents, as mentioned, will be hosting a Reconnect Academy. That will be a really great opportunity to do that. We also plan to sort of tour the state with TBR and with THEC to speak with folks at institutions and bring in the Tennessee Reconnect communities at the same time. Messaging and marketing plan development, college success program development, data collection and sharing plan development. This is all going to start in earnest in early fall. And the presentation of the THEC rules on the Reconnect grant will happen in September. Spring 2018, our plan development will be complete. Those are our goals. Early in 2018. A big Reconnect messaging push will happen probably starting in February and running for several months. And then spring and summer. We want to make sure all of our processes are in place and that we're running the traps and we're making sure everything is working the way it's supposed to work before fall 2018. And this is also a great time for the institutions to begin enhancing and implementing new strategies to serve adult learners, which they're already working on. So that was really a high-level overview, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. Yes.
Involving local industry.
So we haven't involved industry specifically in the advisory council. However, we are looking at our Tennessee Reconnect communities and their representation as proxies in a way for that, since they work so closely with community entities and with employers locally. So, but that is a good recommendation and something that we can include someone from industry on that.
It just seems like we're going to have the local industry as partners in this whole effort to make it really, really work well and be easier on the students coming back to school.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jessica, thank you.
Thanks.
This isn't on our agenda, but I know Commissioner Watson wants to address a topic near and dear to his heart, so I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Commissioner Watson.
Well, thank you. Being new to this commission, some of you have heard me say I feel like a Neanderthal trying to catch a subway. There's a lot to education. Some of you know that I've been practicing law about 50 years. I've seen remarkable changes. The most remarkable lately has been artificial intelligence and how fast it's coming to the whole world. I think we're faced with, and this is not news to most of you, we're faced with probably a new industrial revolution. People that are going to school today are probably going to have jobs 10 years from now that don't exist today. And I would encourage us all to be thinking about what we do in higher education, K-1 through 12, to prepare educational programs that will meet the demand of the future so that we will have people who are employable. Right now, I think education is sort of letting industry take over a big educational role, particularly in science and technology. Google has a school that they teach people. All these high-tech, Apple, et cetera, they train their employees because education is not doing it for them. We have some wonderful programs here. The Institute for Intelligence Systems at the University of Memphis, the programs they have at UT, the data science program we approved at our last meeting. I just think we really need to pay a lot of attention to that. But let me tell you just one quick story and I'll get away. In law, a group called Ross Intelligence has teamed up with Watson. You can ask it a natural language question in two areas right now, bankruptcy and intellectual property. For example, in bankruptcy, you can ask the question, what is the priority of a security interest in consigned goods in a bankruptcy? Overnight, Ross will produce a computer-written memorandum that's as good as any third-year law student can write, with citations. You can get more sophisticated if you buy additional services. It'll sort every bankruptcy case that mentions those terms, consigned goods, etc. So we're going to have a lot of lawyers, for example, that are coming out of law school 3 years from now. If they don't know something about artificial intelligence, they're just unemployable, totally unemployable. In fact, we're having some conversations at the University of Memphis between the law school and ISS to, in the spring, teach a course, develop a course that will merge artificial intelligence and law and let these young lawyers know what the heck's going on before it's too late. But I think we really ought to be thinking about how can we encourage the kind of programs that will keep people employable in this new industrial revolution. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great points. Thank you for sharing that. Final item on our agenda is a higher education THEC salary survey, and I'll call on Commissioner Coben for that.
Well, actually, this item was prompted by one of Dr. Flora Tiding's best quality decisions ever, and that was when she hired Russ Deaton from THEC to serve as her executive vice chancellor. And Russ, once again, in public, congratulations. We are all so proud of you. It was a great loss for us, great advantage for you, wonderful decision on your part, and in many ways it will come back to help us with Russ at the TBR. But when that happened, I sent Evan an email, and I said, I want to know what the salary structure is at THEC among our staff, and how is it that we lost this key employee to one of the systems. And so then Evan and I spoke to Mike about it, and I asked Mike for some salary information for key staff people here at THEC, or the positions, and then also some to compare that to. The university and the community college system, also the LGI system, all of those university presidents, the functional counterparts of the key staff members here at THEC too. And it was pretty scary. The discrepancy in THEC salaries to places that we could lose our staff to, just in state, was anywhere from a 59% to a 74% salary discrepancy from their counterpart, and I will use that word loosely, someplace else in state. Now, the reason I say their counterpart, I use the word loosely, is because we did not delve deeply into job descriptions, numbers of people you supervise, certainly didn't go into how much of a budget do they oversee, because there's some interesting numbers there too. But it was enough information to make me write Chairman Cope and to copy Mike Krause and say, I think we need to just sit down and do a study. Let's get someone outside who's impartial to come in and look at our entire staff and their job descriptions and their salaries. In the meantime, the governor, I find, had already started a salary study in state government, and so THEC will be folded into that. But I think it's something that we particularly need to think about, because the commission is held responsible for ensuring that THEC is able to accomplish its goals successfully. We can't continue to accomplish the governor's and the legislature's objectives if we continue to lose key personnel. And speaking of that, I forgot to mention this. I also asked for some turnover information. Over the last 16 years, THEC has lost 42 employees to educational entities in the state of Tennessee. It's kind of a hemorrhage,
Thank you
really.
for that. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you're all welcome.
The circle of life, as Lou Hanneman comes to us.
Yes, they're grabbing one of our best people.
Something else that came to my attention was about a month ago, I was invited to attend a lunch here in town with the Lumina Grant people, and several THEC staff members were there. And I realized our Tennessee, because of the governor and his initiatives, because of the legislature, because of you people in this room, we're a leader. We're a national leader in educational circles. And you have a lot of people circling Tennessee, asking our THEC staff to come and give a presentation to explain how we've done it here. Why is it working so well in Tennessee? Our staff has national exposure. And in fact, I even told the individual who was in charge of the Lumina team that was here that he could not have Mike Krause. But I don't think he was paying very close attention. He was sort of a sneer instead of a smile, I thought. For all these reasons, I think it's important that we take a look at the salary structure here. And because of Evan's contacts with the governor's office, he has asked to do a special focus on THEC as part of this review of salaries all across the state government. And so we will be talking to Commissioner Rebecca Hunter, the Human Resource Commissioner, to just talk about salaries, job descriptions, and responsibilities.
Let me add one thing to what Commissioner Coben said. She deserves 100% of the credit for recognizing the need to do this and for spearheading the effort to do it. She has already spent a tremendous amount of time researching this issue, and she has graciously agreed to spearhead the effort on behalf of the Commission to make sure that we're in the loop with the governor's office with respect to this salary study. So I want everyone here to please recognize Commissioner Coben for her foresight and for her work on this aspect of it. So are there any questions of Commissioner Coben? Yes, sir.
Do we have the authority to set salaries? How salary set? Who set the legislature?
Statutorily, they're set by the executive director. Typically, what we do, I'll be very honest, it is a budgetary function. We have certain ranges for certain classifications. So to be clear, the executive director has actually almost no latitude regarding salaries. A range of a raise is issued each year by the General Assembly, which we follow.
Other questions? All right, last items here. Just a couple of announcements. Our fall THEC meeting will be November the 15th, 2017. So please mark your calendars for that. We'll get started at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sure we'll have an email sent out before then. And then finally, I'm going to let Mike speak really quickly on the Higher Education Summit, which is coming up August the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And really, Dr. Collier should also be presenting, I think, some of this. We have an opportunity on August 18th for the first time in history to have every single governing board in Tennessee convene together. The locally governed institutions, the University of Tennessee Board, the Board of Regents, and the Higher Education Commission. We think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity. Board members will spend the morning with the governor in a private breakfast to talk about the future of higher education in Tennessee. That will then move into an open summit where I think we're going to have leaders at all levels of all institutions, and it will be a short but impactful program. We will hear from the president of the Lumina Foundation will be traveling here, Bridget Blum, one of the deans from Harvard, who's done an incredible amount of research on the workforce of the future. And then, frankly, the one I'm most excited about is the senior vice president for site selection for Toyota is going to come and talk about when they look for somewhere to relocate in America, this is how higher education can help. We think it's going to be a great opportunity, if nothing else, to have everybody under one roof together sharing a vision.
Very good. Any other business to come before the commission? Yes, sir, Dr. Volpe. Yeah, I said November 15th. Yes, sir, November 15th. Any other questions? Comments? If not, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.